You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and you remember when I said that it seemed like the Nets were going to sign Amir Johnson to be their new backup center? Well, I was wrong, because they went with Donta Hall instead. I really don't mind it. They went with experience with Crawford and Beasley, and now they're bringing in a little bit of youth with Hall. Truthfully, I didn't see any of Donta Hall when he was with the Pistons this year. He only played in 4 games, and I was not watching the Pistons. From reading his stats, I can see that he's similar-ish to how DeAndre Jordan plays. Good rebounder, good defender. I mean, in 4 games this year with the Pistons, in 12 minutes per game, he put up 1.5 points per game and 4 rebounds per game. That's pretty good. That's impressive. And in the G League this year, he shot 26% from 3, which is kind of interesting. To have a really good rebounder who can also stretch the floor, that's interesting. Now, granted, he wasn't exactly shooting the lights out, and yes, that banging that you hear is rain hitting my air conditioner outside. There was a tropical storm warning in my area last night. Nothing hit, and now finally it's hitting. Right when I decide to record this, it hits. Murphy's Law, I'm telling you. Soundproofing can't come soon enough. I think I'm going to get it really, really soon. I know the guy's coming tonight. Not to install it. I'm pretty sure it's going to take more than a day, but just to finalize some things. Regardless, Hall only attempted 27 threes for Grand Rapids this year in the G League, but there's something there. If he can develop a shot and keep his good rebounding up, there's a role for him in the league. He averaged a double-double, 15.5 points per game and 10.5 rebounds per game. He averaged a block and a half per game. That's really impressive. The one downside I thought of was that the Nets are now going to be really small because Hall is 6'9", 232 pounds. Now, they've been small all year, but I thought it would have benefited them to add a beefier center. But they really don't need to, because the only traditional low-post center they're going up against in the restart is Hassan Whiteside. He's going to have a field day against Jared Allen, but everyone else who Allen's going up against, guys like Nikola Vujovic and Rashawn Holmes and the less traditional centers, Jared Allen can hold his own against them. There's a good move for the Nets. It makes sense. They're fielding a competent team. They're not going to embarrass themselves out there. Are they going to end up making the playoffs? Only time will tell. I'd be lying to you if I said I was 100% confident in this roster. I think they'd have been better off sitting out the restart, but they're trying to make a go at this. I commend them for it. If nothing else, they won't embarrass themselves out there. They'll never be in a situation where the majority of guys on the floor shouldn't be there. They'll be able to stagger the rotation. If you want to have, one or two guys on the court who really shouldn't be there in the first place, guys who are just getting on the nets, okay, that's fine. But you've got to have guys who have been there for a while in LeVert and Allen and Harris and Temple. I'll even throw in Chris Chiozza because he was playing well for the Nets before the pause. The majority of guys on the court for the Nets at any given time will be guys who should be there. They won't embarrass themselves out there. They'll be a competent team. They should make the playoffs. And they get to be destroyed in the first round. Nothing will change. Alright, it's time for decades of dumbass decisions. We're on the 5-12 matchups. Traditionally, in March Madness, this is where the most upsets happen. The most big upsets. But, as you know, seeding doesn't matter here because it's all alphabetical. So, for the Yankees, we have the 2010 to 2019 postseasons going up against the Jose Contreras trade. I mean, last decade was the first decade in 100 years, literally 100 years, that the Yankees have not won a pennant. As a Yankee fan, I'll tell you, that's painful. You get accustomed to winning, and when your team doesn't, it hits a little harder. I'm not saying you need to win the World Series every year. I'm not even saying you need to win the pennant every year. What I'm saying is you need to have at least 1 year in the decade if you're the Yankees when you're in the World Series. And the Yankees did not do that. This was a tough decade. The toughest decade in a while, since the 80s. And even then, the Yankees were the most successful team in the 80s. They had the most regular season wins. 2010, the Yankees lost to the Rangers in 6 games in the ALCS. Truthfully, I don't remember much about that series except to say that the Rangers were just the better team. And plus, the Yankees had just come off winning the World Series, so a hangover is to be expected. It's very hard to repeat. That was an acceptable loss. It hurt, but it wasn't terrible. That's why I don't remember it a lot. 2011, in the ALDS, the Yankees lost to the Tigers in 5 games. That's another series that I don't remember a lot. The one thing I remember, and I'm sure I went to more games in this series than just Game 1, but I remember Game 1. The Yankees beat the Tigers 9-3. It was 9-1 entering the top of the 9th. There was this Tiger fan who was still there, cheering on his team hard, and just being a real jerk. You know, it's one thing if you're going to support your team, you know, if you're going to clap when they come up and, you know, silently trying to get something going and you're not making a spectacle out of yourself. But no, this guy was just a real ass. And, I turned to him a bunch of times and I said, hey, shut up. I'm 14 years old at this time and I'm telling this guy to shut up. My dad can see the collision coming. It got to the end of the game, and there were other Yankee fans who were supporting me here. I wasn't the only one yelling at him. But at the end of the game, I was doing the 7-letter chant that you do when you're pointing at the guy and you're, telling him exactly how you feel about him. I'll give you a hint. It sounds very similar to Tadpole. Now, I wasn't going to touch the guy or anything. That wasn't even in the most outer recesses of my mind. But my dad stands in front of me so I can't get to the guy. I didn't want to get to him. I had no reason to get to him. It's sports. You're allowed to say whatever you want within reason. But there's no excuse to get physical. So, I'm doing that chant, and the guy just walks away defeated. I mean, what a jerk. Seriously. Your team's down by 8. Show a little class, please. That's my lasting memory of that series. I don't remember much else. 2012, after a thrilling series against the Orioles, thank you, Raul Ibanez. I was there for all 3 home games. I do remember all 3 home games. But that series took a lot out of the Yankees, evidently, because they were lifeless in the ALCS. The turning point of that series happened in Game 1. Jeter got hurt and didn't play for the rest of the series. The Yankees had to start Jason Nix at shortstop. If you don't remember Jason Nix, there's a good reason for it. He shouldn't be starting in the playoffs. Solid utility infielder, but you don't want him starting. After Game 1, the Yankees only scored 2 runs the rest of the series. It was a joke. They were lifeless. Cano was dreadful. He only had 1 hit. A-Rod was abysmal. He only had 1 hit. Russell Martin only had 2 hits. Thank God for Raul Ibanez. He was the only guy who was competent in that series. Well, him and Suzuki. Swisher, too, was okay. Teixeira was dreadful. I mean, the whole Yankee offense just fell apart. That was a really tough series to sit through. 2015, I've told this story before. The Yankees limp into the playoffs. I get sick for the wild card game. I had tickets. I was going to go. I got sick. I had the flu. Best decision I ever made. Because if I had gone, I would have gotten sick anyway. We've heard of the expression backing into the playoffs. Well, the Yankees backed into the playoffs, hit the curb, hit the car in front of them, hit the car behind them, and then ran over a puppy to get into the playoffs. They were lifeless. There was no chance they were going to win that game. I picked the Astros in that game, and I was right. The worst part of that game, Dallas Keuchel was great. Give him credit. Kept the Yankees off balance the whole game. 6 innings, only gave up 3 hits. The turning point in the game happened in the bottom of the 6th. The Yankees are down 2-0. Runners on first and second, 2 out for A-Rod. It was the first time they had really gotten anything going against Keuchel. At the start of that inning, Keuchel had only allowed one hit. Gregorius got a single. Gardner struck out. Chris Young nearly grounded into a double play, but he was able to beat the relay throw to first. And then Beltran singled. So that's how they got first and second. The pitching coach went out to the mound. And I said this to my mom. We're watching the game together. I said to her, if the Yankees are going to win this game, it has to happen here. They will not get another opportunity. The first pitch that Keuchel throws to A-Rod, he hits a lazy fly ball to the center fielder, Carlos Gomez. Inning over, game over, Astros advance. When I saw A-Rod do that, I wanted to jump through the TV and strangle him. I was so furious. You cannot jump on the first pitch there. You have to make Keuchel work. He's reeling. The first time you've gotten something against him the whole game. You can't jump on the first pitch. I'm still upset over it. 2017, the Yankees go into the playoffs with a new young core, the Baby Bombers, Greg Bird, Aaron Judge, Gary Sanchez. You know, it's a new crop of players, and they're going to lead the Yankees back to the promised land. Luis Severino was there also. And yeah, Severino pitched like garbage in the wild card game, but you know what? The Yankees were able to come back. Thank you, Didi Gregorius. I was there. The ALDS, they're down 2-0 against the Indians. Backs against the wall. They come back and win 3 straight. Game 2 was a Friday night. And Eric was working. I knew he was working. I called him after the Indians won the game. And I said, I just need to talk to someone. I'm so furious. And give Eric credit. He was there. He talked to me. I give Eric a ton of credit. You go down 2-0, and you really thought all hope was lost. But give the Yankees credit. They came back. They won 3 straight. Game 5 was a really, really fun game. The Yankees are up 3-2, headed into the top of the 9th. They're able to get to Cody Allen and ice the game. That leads them into the Astros. If memory serves, I picked the Astros in 6, but there was a sense that the Yankees could win this series. You know, they had shown that they thrived when they were the underdog. That's a great quality to have when you're in the playoffs. This new group of players wasn't getting starstruck by the bright October lights. But games 1 and 2 were dreadful. The Yankees lost both 2-1. Game 3, do or die game. The Yankees are not going to come back from 3-0 down. They destroy the Astros in Game 3. Alright, keep the momentum up. You have to win Game 4 also. I couldn't go to this game. I had a test. I couldn't move it. The Yankees are down 4-0 entering the bottom of the 7th. Lance McCullers kills them, only gives up 2 hits. The Astros had a good bullpen that year. Guys like Chris Davinsky, Luke Gregerson, and Ken Giles had really good years. No one thought the Yankees could come back, but they scored 2 in the 7th. Alright. You're still down 4-2. The bottom of the 8th hits. The Yankees are able to engineer a great comeback. They get to Ken Giles. He gives up 3 hits. And they win the game in one of the more improbable comebacks you'll see. My father went to that game with a friend of his, and he said to me, because I was going to go the game afterwards, Game 5, my dad couldn't go, so we shared in the misery. My dad called me, and he said to me, Jacob, I know you're taking Eric to Game 5, get to his house early, because I hit traffic, and I didn't get into the stadium until the 2nd inning. Okay, no problem. I wanted to get to Eric's house at like 2:30ish. It was a 5 o'clock start. And I told Eric, I'm going to be at your house at 2:30. I oversleep. Big shocker to those who know me. I don't get to his house until 3. Now, if there's no traffic, if it's an average regular season game, you can get from Eric's house to the stadium in 2 hours and be there by first pitch. No problem. But for the playoffs, from what my dad told me, yeah, we were up against the wall. Have to take the back roads to get to the stadium because the parkways are backing up. We get to the parking lot at, I want to say 4:30, 4:45-ish. I don't remember the exact time. Eric and I are power walking to the stadium. We really don't want to miss any of this game. The Yankees have a special entrance, and airports have this too. It's called Clear. I said to Eric, don't worry, I have a special entrance that we can use. Now, I'm thinking to myself, okay, the clear line's going to be shorter, but there's still going to be a wait. There was literally no line to use the clear line. Eric and I got in by first pitch. It was incredible. Now, Andy Pettitte threw out the ceremonial first pitch, and we weren't in our seats by then, but we were in the stadium. So I did get Eric there by first pitch. My dad was actually really impressed when I told him that story. The Yankees destroy the Astros in Game 5. The Astros are lifeless. The Yankees are 1 win away from winning their 41st pennant. I had called in to be on the game, and I said, the Yankees are going to win Game 7. They're going to lose Game 6. They won't be able to hit Justin Verlander. But they'll be able to hit Charlie Morton. They hit Morton in Game 3. Why couldn't they do it again? Oh, how wrong I was. Stupid Jacob. I was right that Verlander killed him in Game 6. Game 7, I didn't expect Charlie Morton and Lance McCullers to kill him. The two of them combined for only 3 hits allowed. Morton pitched 5 innings. McCullers pitched 4. Watching that game was one of the most infuriating moments of my life. The year after that, they meet the Red Sox in the ALDS. The Yankees just didn't deserve to win that series. They make the big trade for J. Happ with the sole purpose of beating the Red Sox. Happ lays an egg in Game 1. Game 2, Tanaka pitches great. That's what Tanaka does. He pitches well in the playoffs. Game 3 is one of the worst games in Yankee playoff history. They lose 16-1. Lance Lynn was dreadful. Chad Green was dreadful. I mean, that was as painful can get. And then Game 4, the Yankees only get one hit from the 6th inning on. They are lifeless. They're down 4-1. Craig Kimbrell coming in. Chris Sale pitched the 8th. Smart decision by Alex Cora. I give him a ton of credit for that. That made a ton of sense. But the Yankees are able to get to Kimbrell. They loaded the bases against him with only one out. Neil Walker gets hit by a pitch to make it 4-2. Gary Sanchez hits a sac fly to score Didi Gregorius 4-3. There's a sense that the Yankees can do this. They can come back. Gleyber Torres up, and he hits a ground ball to Eduardo Nunez. Eduardo Nunez came up with the Yankees. Now, what's the one thing you remember about Nunez with the Yankees? Well, two things, actually. You remember the bat. He had a good bat. Terrible glove. I saw Eduardo Nunez botch that same play 100 times with the Yankees. He didn't botch it there. And the Yankees were eliminated. And then last year, we all know what happened. You don't need me to rehash it. More to the point, I really don't want to rehash it. The one thing I'll say, I've been hard on Aaron Hicks in the past. I'm not a big Hicks fan, but I thank him for hitting the home run in Game 5. Paxton was great after that. So two unlikely heroes in Hicks and Paxton staved off elimination for the Yankees. They go into Game 6. A battle of openers. No one had any idea how this game was going to go. This was uncharted waters for everyone. Neither starter made it out of the second inning, and that was by design. I mean, Chad Green failed in his opening duties. In his one inning of work, he gave up 3 runs. He had opened games before and had been really good, but he just couldn't do it in the playoffs. It doesn't work in the playoffs. The one thing I really remember from that game, the thing that just sticks out in my mind, the Yankees are down 4-2 entering the top of the 9th. Gio Urshela gets on. Hits a single. Gardner strikes out. DJ LeMahieu gets up. LeMahieu hits a home run. My dad isn't a very demonstrative person. I have never heard him cheer louder while sitting at home watching a game than he did when LeMahieu hit that home run. And we thought, and every Yankee fan thought, they're going to win this game. Oh, how wrong we were. Jose Altuve. Look, I give him credit for hitting a good Chapman pitch. I mean, Chapman got some heat after that. That wasn't Chapman's fault. That was just Altuve being Altuve. I'm furious at this point. I throw a stress ball across the house. Nick and I were texting throughout the game. We were lamenting it to each other. Mark had called me afterwards, and he's the biggest Yankee hater on earth. Chris Russo has nothing on him. Even he knew how painful this was. To come back in the 9th, only to blow it. Yeah. That sucked. All of that is going up against the Jose Contreras trade. Now, I remember when the Yankees signed Jose Contreras from Cuba. He was hyped up as the next big thing. He's going to anchor the Yankee rotation for a long time. They're going to have Clemens, Pettit, Mussina, and Contreras. I mean, the Yankees are going to win God knows how many World Series with him. And Contreras pitched well his rookie year. Laid an egg in the World Series against the Marlins. And didn't pitch well in the ALCS either. But the one thing I'll say, he was a rookie. Of course he's not going to pitch well in the playoffs. How many rookies come in their first playoffs and dominate? The list is very, very short. It didn't bother me that Contreras laid an egg. In 2004, Contreras gets off to a rough start. He's 8-5, which I like, but he had a 5.64 ERA. But still, the talent was there. The Yankees decided to cut bait on him a year and a half into his tenure with the Yankees. Bear in mind, this guy was signed to a 4-year deal worth $32 million. Year and a half in, that's it. We want out. And the Yankees traded for Esteban Loaiza. In 2003, Loaiza had his best season. Won 21 games, started the All-Star game, pitched great. Before that, he was a really bad pitcher. He had a losing record. 69-73. He had a 4.88 ERA. The Yankees decided to trade for him. This guy was one of the worst pitchers I've ever seen. With the Yankees, he went 1-2 with an 8.5 ERA. He was atrocious. I'm 6 years old and I'm booing this guy. I knew a good baseball player from a bad baseball player even then. The one thing I'll say is, he pitched well in the playoffs. Game 4 of the 2004 ALDS against the Twins, he pitched 2 big innings. Game 5 of the 2004 ALCS, he did as well as you could expect. And Game 7, he pitched well, although who cares? But I couldn't get the regular season out of my mind. I still hated him. Was glad to see him go to the Nationals. As much as I hated Loaiza, and still hate Loaiza, it doesn't even come close to the last decade's playoffs. When you're a Yankee fan, you expect the team to win every year. And when they don't, it cuts you like a knife. Moving over to the Islanders, we have Dmitry Nabokov going up against Sterling for Laviolette. It's okay if you don't know who Dmitry Nabokov was. He was a former first-round pick by the Chicago Blackhawks in 1995, and he was a highly regarded prospect. In the 97-98 season, Nabokov played 25 games for the Blackhawks and scored 11 points. The future looked bright, but after that, he fell out of favor in Chicago. Spent the whole year in the AHL, Mike Milbury decided to take a chance on him. In theory, that makes sense, right? You take a chance on a former first-rounder who's shown that he can contribute in the NHL. The Islanders are bad anyway. Worst comes to worst, he doesn't pan out. Well, who did the Islanders give up? They traded J.P. Dumont, a guy who was the third overall pick by the Islanders in '96. The Islanders traded a guy who they drafted in the top 3 for a former top prospect before he ever played a game for the Islanders. Now, Dumont was never great, but he was a solid second or third liner. The Islanders would have been much better with him than Nabokov. Nabokov only played 30 games for the Islanders, scoring only 13 points. After the 99-2000 season, Nabokov went back to Russia, and he actually died last year. I did not know that Dmitry Nabokov was dead. That's going up against Peter Laviolette being replaced by Steve Sterling. Yeah, it's as stupid as it sounds. Laviolette was an unproven commodity when he first got to the Islanders. He had success in the minors. His first year as a head coach in any capacity was for the Wheeling Nailers of the ECHL. They made it all the way to the third round. Laviolette moved up the ranks to the Providence Bruins of the AHL. They went on to win the Calder Cup, and the year after that, they ended up losing in the third round. After that, the Bruins promoted him to their NHL coaching staff, but he was still an unknown commodity to many NHL fans. It was a surprise when Mike Milbury hired him. But Laviolette immediately made that decision look really, really smart. His first year with the Islanders was 01-02. They made the playoffs for the first time since '94 when they got swept by the Rangers. And they had a thrilling 7-game series against the Leafs. One of the best series in Islander playoff history. Even though they lost that series, those games were tough, those games were competitive, those games were great. God bless Sean Bates for that penalty shot goal on Curtis Joseph. It was actually on MSG Plus not that long ago. The year after that, things went south. The Islanders came out of the gate flat. They rallied in the middle of the season, but they really limped into the playoffs. The last home game they won in the regular season was on March 1st. They limp into the playoffs. They're going up against the Senators. They play a great game 1, but then they get destroyed in games 2 through 5. In total, they only scored 4 goals. The lowest point of that series was game 3. The Islanders had 10 power plays. They only scored once, and it was at the end of the first period. Randy Robitaille scored. I mean, when you have 10 power plays, you've got to do better than just scoring once. Mike Milbury takes the failure of that season, puts it all on Laviolette, and replaces him with Steve Sterling. He doesn't look to the players. He doesn't look to Yashin. He doesn't look to Pekka, who had a bad year that year. He doesn't look to anyone else but Laviolette. And he cans him. Right after that, he went on Mike and the Mad Dog to explain the decision. And Milbury said that the biggest reason that Laviolette was fired was because Milbury thought that Laviolette had lost the team. And here's the one thing I'll say. Whenever a coach loses a team, it's very difficult to get that team back. In fact, it's almost impossible. But when that happens, you need to make a choice. Do you have more faith in the coach, or do you have more faith in the players? Milbury had more faith in Alexei Yashin, Mark Parrish, Jason Blake, Michael Pekka, and Dave Scatchard than he did Peter Laviolette. I mean, if you want to remedy the breakdown in communication, that's fine, but blow the team up. That's why the Islanders were bad. They were a bad team. It's a miracle they got into the playoffs at all. Laviolette deserved an extension for that, not to be fired. Give Mike and the Mad Dog a ton of credit for destroying that decision. I mean, they ripped it. I don't think they've ever talked hockey that much before. At least not since '94. They crucified it. I mean, they ripped it from every angle. That interview is on YouTube, and it is worth listening to. Laviolette was replaced by Steve Sterling. I never liked Sterling, and part of it was because I really liked Laviolette. I mean, the Islanders weren't a good defensive team that year. They were good offensively. They scored the 5th most goals in the NHL in Sterling's full year coaching them. But you could tell that they weren't a great team. They went up against the Lightning in the first round and got shut out 3 times. I'm not kidding. They lost games 1, 3, and 4, 3-0. In that series, they didn't score a goal in the Nassau Coliseum. The one thing I'll say in Sterling's defense is it would have been interesting to see how he would have done as coach if there was no lockout. Because he got hit hard by the lockout, as did the Islanders. The Islanders lost a ton of big pieces. Sterling didn't even make it through the season. He was fired halfway through, was replaced by Brad Shaw. Look, I don't think Steve Sterling would have been anything special if there was no lockout, but it would have been interesting to see how it would have played out. And what did Peter Laviolette do after that? Oh, nothing major. He just went on to win a Stanley Cup. The year after the lockout, the Hurricanes win the Stanley Cup in Peter Laviolette's first full year as coach. And he's made the Stanley Cup 2 other times. His first year with the Flyers, they went on to the Cup Finals. When he was with the Predators, they made the playoffs every single year. It's a mystery to me how he's still unemployed. I'd have moved on him yesterday if my team had a head coaching vacancy. The decision to fire Laviolette for Sterling is worse than Nabokov. Dumont was a solid second or third liner. And it hurt to lose him before he ever played a game for the Islanders, but the decision to fire Laviolette for Sterling and seeing Laviolette win a Stanley Cup after that, that's a million times worse. Moving over to the Jets, we have the 2004 divisional round going up against Chad Pennington's Health. The 04 divisional round saw the Jets take on the Steelers. Now, they had just won a thrilling game against the Chargers in the wild card game. The Jets blow a lead really late. 16 seconds left in regulation. Drew Brees throws a touchdown pass to Antonio Gates from the 1-yard line. I mean, give Brees credit. He organized a great drive at the end of the game to tie the game up. And with only 8 seconds left in overtime, Doug Bryan, remember that name because it's going to be important later, kicked a game-winning 28-yard field goal. So every Jets fan has faith in Doug Bryan at this point. That faith could not have been more misplaced. I'll fast forward to the fourth quarter. The game is tied at 17. With 6 minutes left, Chad Pennington orchestrates this drive to get the ball down to the Steelers' 28-yard line. We're at the 2-minute warning at this point. A field goal here gives the Jets the lead, and God only knows what would have happened after that. Doug Bryan misses a 47-yard field goal. So the Steelers get the ball back at the 37-yard line with just under 2 minutes left to play. The first pass that Roethlisberger throws on that drive is intercepted by David Barrett. A very obscure figure in Jets history, but he would have been remembered a lot more if this game had gone differently. The Jets run out the clock with 4 seconds left. Bryan attempts a 43-yard field goal. He's not going to miss another one. After all, look what he did against the Chargers. He had kicked a field goal in this game from 42 yards. This was from 43. This guy has been a very clutch kicker all throughout his career. He won a Super Bowl in '94 with the Niners. Instead, Bryan misses the field goal. 43 yards, no good. The game goes into overtime. The Jets get the ball first. They have to punt, and they don't get the ball back. Roethlisberger orchestrates a great drive, and Jeff Reed kicks a 33-yarder to win the game for the Steelers. The Jets should have won that game. Bryan should have made one of those field goals. I mean, that's one of the most heartbreaking losses in Jets history because they had a really, really golden opportunity to score a major, major playoff upset. The Steelers were 15-1 in the regular season that year. The Jets were 10-6. It was at Heinz Field. The Steelers were 9-point favorites. The Jets had every opportunity to win, and they just couldn't. And that's going up against the quarterback of that Jets team, Chad Pennington. Pennington is the first Jets quarterback that I remember. I remember Testaverde, obviously. I remember Brooks Bollinger. But when I was getting into football, Pennington was the guy. This is the guy who, if the Jets were going to do anything, it had to be Pennington. And it took him a while to get the starting spot. He was drafted in 2000. He didn't get the starting job until 2002. Pennington immediately made that decision look smart. The Jets went 8-4 under him after starting the season 1-4. The Jets finished 9-7. They made the playoffs. They destroyed the Colts 41-0. They made Peyton Manning look terrible. I remember that game vividly. My mom wanted me to do something. It's like, no, Mom, I'm watching this game. This is Peyton Manning getting destroyed by the Jets. I want to watch this. Pennington that year led the NFL in completion percentage with 69%. Nice. And a 104.2 quarterback rating. So this is the guy. You know, the Jets finally found their guy. They had to suffer through Neil O'Donnell and Ray Lucas and Rick Mirer, but no, they finally found their guy. No, they didn't. Chad Pennington would only start 16 games for the Jets once. In 2003, he only started 9 games. In 2004, 13 games. In 2005, 3 games. The Jets went 4-12 that year. It led to them firing Herm Edwards. And I really liked Herm Edwards. 2006, he starts 16 games, give him credit. But he really wasn't that special. He had a good completion percentage, 64.5%. Threw for over 3,300 yards, but only 17 touchdowns to 16 interceptions. That's not good. In 2007, the Jets go 1-7 with him as quarterback en route to a 4-12 season. Pennington gets benched for Kellen Clemens. And then actually has to go back into action, but he got hurt again. It's such a huge what if. How good could he have been? He wouldn't have been great. He wouldn't have been Brady. He wouldn't have been Peyton Manning. He wouldn't have been Drew Brees. He wouldn't have been, Michael Vick. But he would have been a really good quarterback if he had stayed healthy. Because he couldn't, the Jets had to suffer through some really bad seasons. As big a what if as that is, the 2004 divisional round is worse. You have a golden opportunity to knock off a great Steelers team, and you just can't do it. I mean, Doug Bryan's name now among Jets fans is mud. Chad Pennington's name among Jets fans is, oh, what could have been. Needless to say, mud is worse than, oh, what could have been. Moving over to the Nets, we have a couple interesting names. Dennis Hopson versus Raleigh Massimino. When I showed this to a friend of mine, he had no idea who Dennis Hopson was. In fact, there are a bunch of Nets fans that will have never heard that name before. And it's okay. Because Hopson is one of the biggest busts in Nets history. He was picked 3rd overall by the Nets in 87. 2 picks later, Scottie Pippen was taken. But okay, what did Hobson do? Scottie had Michael, right? Come on. Pippen was nothing. Look at what he did with the Blazers. Blah, 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 blah. I can hear it now. No. Alright, first up, Scottie Pippen playing with Drazen Petrovic and Derek Coleman. That would have been great. Secondly, Dennis Hobson for the Nets was just okay at best. Was not a good three-point shooter. In his Nets career, he averaged 13 points a game, 3 rebounds per game, and 2 assists per game. All while shooting 27.7% from beyond the arc. Pippen goes on to be a Hall of Famer. Hobson only spends 5 seasons in the NBA. Abysmal pick. That's going up against Rollie Massimino. Well, Jacob, Rollie Massimino never coached the Nets. What are you talking about? This was something that I did not know. This I found out while I was doing research for Decades of Dumbass Decisions. Massimino, after he won the 85 tournament with Villanova, came very close to leaving for the Nets. The Nets had Stan Albeck. Albeck was a good coach for the Nets, but he wasn't great. The Nets decided to move on from him. And they were really, really close to getting Massimino. I mean, this would have been like getting John Calipari now, or getting Jay Wright now. Instead, Massimino decides to stay at Villanova. Okay, fine. You know, sometimes when you get really comfortable at a program, you just don't want to leave. Look at Krzyzewski with Duke. So the Nets pivot to Dave Wohl. Dave Wohl was an abysmal coach for the Nets. They never had a winning record under him. I mean, instead you could have had Massimino. It doesn't get much worse than that when you're looking at coaching searches. But I'm going to say that Dennis Hobson is worse because we know what Scottie Pippen became. One of the greatest players in NBA history. Rollie Massimino, as good as I think he would have been for the Nets, we don't know. He never made that jump to the NBA. Never. Would he have been John Beilein, or would he have been Billy Donovan? We'll never know. Until Monday, I am Jacob Valk saying that Brooks Robinson never asked anyone to name a candy bar after him. In Baltimore, people named their children after him.